You are not who you think you are. That voice in your head narrating your life, that's not you either. The personality you've spent decades constructing is, according to Jung, mostly a survival mechanism called the persona, a mask you wear to avoid rejection. Meanwhile, the real self, the vast intelligence that dreams your dreams and pumps your heart, remains unknown to you. Most people die without ever meeting themselves. They live in the costume, mistake the actor for the role. Jung's entire psychology is about the dangerous, sacred journey of removing the mask. Not to become someone new, but to discover who you've been all along. And I know this sounds confrontational, maybe even threatening, because if you're not who you think you are, then who are you? If the personality is a mask, what's underneath? And this is precisely why most people never take this journey. It's terrifying. It means admitting that the life you've built, the identity you've defended, the story you tell about yourself, it might all be theater. A performance you started so young you forgot you were acting. But here's what Jung understood that changes everything. The terror isn't in discovering you're not who you thought. The terror is in continuing to live as someone you're not. Because that split, that gap between the mask and the truth, creates every form of psychological suffering you can imagine. Depression is the soul refusing to participate in a false life. Anxiety is the pressure of unexpressed truth. Addiction is misdirected spiritual hunger. Every symptom you're trying to medicate away is actually the psyche screaming, "Stop abandoning yourself." You're watching this because something in you knows that the standard psychological approaches aren't cutting it. You've been told your problems are chemical imbalances, behavioral patterns to be corrected, or symptoms to be medicated away, and maybe those things help. But they don't explain why your life keeps circling the same themes, why you attract the same relationship dynamics, why you feel somehow split between who you present to the world and who you are when no one's watching. Here's the painful truth most therapy avoids. Your suffering isn't a mistake to be eliminated. It's the psyche's way of demanding transformation. You're not broken, you're becoming. And this is the core of Jung's revolutionary insight. He wasn't interested in making you normal or adjusted to society. He was interested in making you whole, which is something entirely different. Wholeness means integrating everything you've rejected, denied, pushed into the basement of your consciousness. Jung discovered that the human psyche operates on myth, symbol, and paradox, not logic. Your unconscious speaks in dreams, slips of tongue, inexplicable attractions and repulsions. It's been trying to guide you toward wholeness your entire life, but you've been trained to ignore its language. You were taught to trust only rational thought, to dismiss dreams as nonsense, to pathologize your symptoms, to see your darkness as something to eliminate rather than integrate. The unique insight this video delivers is this. Jung revealed that psychological healing isn't about becoming better according to external standards. It's about becoming whole, which means integrating everything you've rejected about yourself. The parts you've labeled bad contain your power, your creativity, your vitality. The depression might be your soul demanding you stop living someone else's life. The anxiety might be unexpressed truth creating pressure. The addiction might be a misdirected spiritual hunger. Your psyche is not malfunctioning. It's functioning exactly as it should, trying to guide you back to yourself. What makes this different from everything else you've heard is that this isn't positive thinking or behavioral adjustment. This is about diving into the unconscious, meeting your shadow, dialoguing with your inner figures, and individuating. Jung's word for becoming your true, undivided self. Most advice tells you what to do. Jung teaches you how to listen to yourself so you finally know. He gives you a map for navigating the inner territory, for understanding the symbolic language of your own psyche, for working with the intelligence that's been trying to reach you through every symptom, every dream, every so-called coincidence. By the end of this video, you won't just understand Jung's ideas. You'll have a framework that makes sense of your symptoms, your patterns, your seemingly random life events. You'll see that the chaos has always been meaningful. You'll understand what your dreams have been saying. You'll know how to work with, rather than against, the deeper intelligence trying to live through you. And most importantly, you'll stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as someone in the middle of a sacred, difficult, necessary transformation. So let me tell you a story. Jung once worked with a woman who, by all external measures, was perfect. She was successful in her career, composed in every social situation, admired by everyone who knew her. She was the kind of person people pointed to as an example of having it all together. But she came to Jung because she kept having the same dream, night after night, and it was starting to terrify her. In the dream, she was drowning in a dark lake. The water was cold and thick, pulling her down, and she was struggling, gasping, fighting for her life. But here's what made it unbearable. There were people on the shore, friends, family, colleagues, and they were waving at her, smiling, as if everything was fine, as if they couldn't see that she was drowning, or worse, as if they could see but didn't care, because she looked fine on the surface. She wanted Jung to make the dream stop. She wanted a technique, a prescription, something to fix this nightmare so she could get back to her perfect life. And Jung told her something that shocked her. He said, "Your dream isn't the problem. Your life is. You're drowning in a persona, a false self you maintain to please others. And your unconscious is screaming at you to acknowledge the darkness you've repressed." The woman was furious. She insisted she was fine. She had a good life, good relationships, success, respect. Who was he to tell her she was living falsely? But Jung didn't back down. He asked her a simple question. When you're alone, truly alone with no one watching, who are you? What do you feel? What do you want? And the woman couldn't answer. She literally couldn't answer because she had no idea. She'd spent so many years being what others needed her to be that she'd lost all contact with her own inner life. The symptoms escalated. She developed insomnia. She couldn't sleep because every time she closed her eyes, the drowning dream returned. Then came migraines so severe she had to cancel important meetings. Then sudden, inexplicable rage at minor inconveniences. A waiter getting her order wrong would send her into a fury that shocked her. Her perfect composure was cracking, and she was terrified. Finally, in a session, Jung asked her to do something unusual. He said, "Close your eyes. Imagine the woman in the lake. Let her surface. Let her come out of the water and speak. What would she say if she could finally tell the truth?" And the woman closed her eyes, and at first nothing happened. She sat there tense, defended, but Jung waited, and slowly something broke open. The floodgates opened. Decades of suppressed anger poured out. She was furious at her parents for teaching her that love was conditional on perfection. She was furious at herself for abandoning her own desires to maintain approval. She was exhausted from performing, from smiling when she wanted to scream, from agreeing when she wanted to say no. She'd spent her entire life playing the role of the good woman, the capable woman, the woman who never needs anything, never makes a mess, never disappoints. And beneath that mask, she was drowning. Jung didn't cure her. He didn't make her happy or well-adjusted. He helped her stop abandoning herself. He helped her see that the depression, the rage, the nightmares, these weren't malfunctions. They were the psyche's refusal to continue participating in a false life. And here's the beautiful part. As she began to acknowledge her anger, to set boundaries, to admit what she actually wanted instead of what she thought she should want, the dream shifted. The lake became calm, and she wasn't drowning anymore. She was swimming, not struggling, not performing, just moving through the water with her own natural rhythm. This is what Jung means by the shadow. The shadow is everything you've rejected, denied, or repressed about yourself. And for this woman, the shadow was her anger, her needs, her selfishness. All the parts she'd been taught were unacceptable. She'd exiled them into the unconscious, and they were drowning. Down there, demanding to be acknowledged. The dream was their voice. Now you might be thinking, what does this have to do with me? I'm not a perfect person pretending to be fine. Or maybe you are, and you just don't see it yet. Because the shadow doesn't just belong to the repressed and proper. It belongs to everyone. Every single human being has parts of themselves they've rejected, parts they won't look at, parts they project onto others. And until you meet your shadow, until you bring it into consciousness, you'll keep living in reaction to it. Let me tell you another story, because this one gets even stranger. Jung tells of a deeply rational, skeptical patient he worked with. She was a scientist, committed to materialism, to the belief that the universe was mechanical, predictable, devoid of inherent meaning. She came to therapy because she was stuck, intellectually brilliant but emotionally dead, successful but profoundly unfulfilled. And she was making no progress in analysis because she was too defended, too committed to her worldview. Every interpretation Jung offered, she dismissed with logic. During one session, she recounted a dream. In the dream, a golden scarab beetle appeared, an ancient Egyptian symbol of rebirth, of transformation, of something dying and being reborn. Jung immediately recognized the symbolic significance, but he also knew that if he simply told her what it meant, she'd intellectualize it, dismiss it, keep the interpretation at arm's length. So he said nothing. He just listened. And as she spoke, he heard something, a tapping at the window behind him. He turned, opened the window, and a scarab beetle, rare in Switzerland, especially indoors, especially in that season, flew into the room and landed on his desk. The woman went pale. Her entire body froze. For a moment she couldn't speak. And Jung simply picked up the beetle and handed it to her, saying, "Here is your scarab." The woman's worldview shattered, not in a destructive way, but in the way an egg must break for something new to emerge. Her insistence that the universe was mechanical, that everything could be explained by cause and effect, that meaning was just a human projection. All of it collapsed in that instant because there was no rational explanation for this. The probability of a scarab beetle appearing at the exact moment she was describing a dream about a scarab was so astronomically low that it couldn't be dismissed as a mere coincidence. Jung understood something profound in that moment. The unconscious had orchestrated an outer event to correspond with an inner process. Her psyche was ready for transformation. The dream of the scarab was the signal. And reality itself participated in that transformation by providing a physical scarab at precisely the right moment. Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidence, the unity of inner and outer, mind and matter, psyche and world. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like magical thinking. This sounds like New Age nonsense, like confirmation bias, like seeing patterns where there are none. And Jung would tell you that yes, people do see false patterns all the time. People do fall into superstition, into believing every coincidence is meaningful. But synchronicity is different. It's not about forcing meaning onto random events. It's about recognizing when something emerges from the depths of the psyche and simultaneously manifests in the outer world in a way that defies probability and carries undeniable psychological significance. Think about your own life. You've thought of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and within hours, they call you. You've been struggling with a decision, feeling completely stuck, and a stranger in a coffee shop has a conversation that contains the exact guidance you needed. You've had a dream that comes true in specific, unmistakable detail. You've had moments where a book falls off the shelf and opens to the exact page you needed to read. And you've dismissed these as coincidence because you were taught that the universe doesn't work this way. But what if it does? What if the boundary between inner and outer, between mind and matter, is far more permeable than materialist science admits? Jung wasn't proposing some vague mysticism. He was reporting what he observed again and again in 30 years of clinical practice. Synchronicity happens most often during periods of intense transformation, when the ego's defenses are down, when the self, the deeper organizing intelligence of the psyche, is actively at work. It's as if the unconscious reaches out through dreams, symptoms, intuitions, and simultaneously reaches out through the world, arranging encounters, events, moments that guide you toward wholeness. The scarab appeared when the woman was ready to be reborn, when her old worldview was ready to die. The synchronicity didn't create the transformation. It confirmed it, midwifed it, made it undeniable. And for Jung, this revealed something staggering. The unconscious doesn't just live inside your head, it's woven into the fabric of reality. Psyche and matter are two aspects of one underlying unity. And when you're aligned with the self, when transformation is imminent, the world starts speaking your language. So if the unconscious is this vast intelligent force connecting your inner world to outer events, what exactly is it made of? Where do these symbols, these dreams, these synchronicities come from? And Jung's answer will sound impossible at first, but once you see it, you'll recognize it's been operating your entire life. Imagine your psyche as a kingdom. This is not just metaphor. This is how the psyche actually structures itself in dreams, myths, and imagination. So imagine a kingdom. On the throne sits the king, and the king is your conscious ego, the you that you think you are. The voice in your head that says, I. The king believes he rules absolutely, that he's in control of the kingdom, that he makes all the decisions, that he knows everything happening within his realm. The king is rational, linear, deliberate. He plans, he reasons, he tries to maintain order. But beneath the throne room are dungeons, dark, locked chambers where the shadow dwells. These are all the exiled parts of you, the parts labeled unacceptable by your family, your culture, your religion, your society. The angry child who was told anger is bad. The sexual creature who was told desire is shameful. The lazy one who was told productivity equals worth. The selfish one who was told selflessness is virtue. The king imprisoned them long ago to maintain order and approval, and he's terrified of what would happen if they escaped. Beside the king stands the persona, a beautifully painted mask the king wears whenever visitors arrive. The mask smiles when the king is furious. It agrees when the king wants to scream no. It's poised when the king is collapsing inside. It's pleasant, appropriate, acceptable. The mask is exhausting to maintain, but the king believes survival depends on it. Without the mask, he fears, no one would love him. No one would accept him. He'd be rejected, exiled, alone. Wandering the kingdom is the fool, the trickster, the chaos agent. He speaks in riddles, makes inappropriate jokes, causes slips of the tongue. The king tries to control the fool, but the fool is uncontrollable. He serves a deeper master. The fool is the one who makes you say the wrong name during sex, who makes you miss the important meeting because you forgot to set an alarm, who makes you trip and spill coffee on the person you were trying to impress. The king thinks the fool is an enemy, but the fool is actually a messenger, trying to show the king what he's ignoring. And deep in the center of the kingdom, in a chamber the king has never entered, sits the self, the true sovereign, the divine intelligence that dreamed the entire kingdom into being. The self is vast, paradoxical, containing both king and shadow, light and dark, order and chaos, masculine and feminine, life and death. The self is the God image within, the totality, the wholeness. And here's the secret the king doesn't know. He's not actually in charge. He never has been. The self has been running everything from the beginning, guiding through dreams, symptoms, intuitions, synchronicities. The king's job isn't to rule, it's to serve the self, to align with it, to become its conscious instrument. Jung called the journey from king to self-individuation. It's the process of the ego descending from the throne, going down into the dungeons to meet the shadow, removing the persona to reveal the true face, following the fool's cryptic guidance, and finally, encountering the self in that central chamber. It's the ego surrendering its illusion of total control to serve the deeper wholeness. Most people live their entire lives as the king in the throne room, never suspecting the real ruler has always been the self, patiently waiting for recognition. They identify completely with the ego, thinking that's all they are. They maintain the persona at any cost. They keep the shadow locked away. They ignore the fool's messages, and they suffer. God, do they suffer. Because the self will not be ignored forever. It will send symptoms, dreams, crises, breakdowns, anything to get the king's attention, to force him to begin the descent. This might sound abstract, mythical even. But Jung insisted it was intensely practical, because every psychological symptom, every recurring problem in your life is the self trying to get the king's attention. Your depression is the self saying the life you're living doesn't match who you truly are. Your anxiety is the self saying you're ignoring something crucial. Your addiction is the self saying you're trying to fill a spiritual void with material substances. Your relationship patterns, always attracting the same type of partner who hurts you, that's the self showing you your unintegrated shadow through projection. So let's get practical. Let's talk about the actual mechanisms of how this works, the specific structures of the psyche that Jung mapped with extraordinary precision. Because this isn't philosophy. This is the operating system of your inner life. First, the persona. The persona is your social mask, your public face, the version of you that you present to gain acceptance and avoid rejection. And here's what's tricky. You need some persona. You can't just walk through life with zero social adaptation, saying every thought, expressing every impulse. That would be chaos. A certain amount of performance is necessary and healthy. The problem comes when you identify with the persona, when you believe you are the mask, when you've been performing for so long that you've forgotten you're performing. This happens gradually, usually starting in childhood. You learn what gets approval and what gets punishment. You learn that certain parts of you are acceptable and certain parts must be hidden. So you create a version of yourself that maximizes love and minimizes rejection. And over years, decades, you'll lose contact with who you actually are beneath the performance. The danger of persona identification is that you start making life decisions based on the mask's needs, not the self's calling. You choose a career that looks impressive but feels dead inside. You maintain relationships that exhaust you because ending them would damage your image. You perform emotions you don't actually feel, smiling when you're miserable, agreeing when you want to say no, acting interested when you're bored out of your mind. And the whole time, the real you is suffocating underneath. The symptom of persona identification is a very specific kind of suffering. Chronic fatigue, even though you're sleeping enough, numbness, emotional flatness, the feeling of going through the motions, depression that no one believes because you seem so functional, so put together. You describe it as feeling like you're watching your own life from outside, like you're an actor playing a role, but you've forgotten who the actual person is. People tell you how great you're doing, and you want to scream because you feel completely hollow inside. Jung's question to diagnose persona identification is simple and devastating. What would you do if no one was watching? Who would you be if approval didn't matter? What would you say? What would you pursue? How would you live if you knew no one would judge you? And if you can't answer that question, if the thought terrifies you or leaves you blank, then you're living in the persona. You've built your entire identity on external validation, and you have no idea who you are without it. The practice is to start noticing the gap. Notice the difference between how you act in public and who you are alone. That gap is the persona. Notice when you're performing, when you're saying what you think you should say rather than what you actually think, when you're presenting an emotion you don't feel, when you're maintaining an image that requires constant effort. And then very carefully, very gradually, start closing that gap. Stop performing one small thing. Say one true thing in a conversation where you'd normally be polite. Express one real preference when you'd normally defer. Let one person see you slightly more as you actually are. This is terrifying because you've been operating on the belief that the real you is unlovable, that you need the mask to be accepted. But here's what Jung discovered. The opposite is true. The persona prevents real intimacy. People can't actually love you if they're only meeting the mask, and the few people who can handle the real you, the ones who don't need you to perform, those are your people. Everyone else was always conditional anyway, but the persona is only half the problem, because everything you cut away to create that acceptable public face doesn't disappear. It goes underground. It goes into the shadow. The shadow is everything you've rejected, denied, or repressed about yourself. It's built from all the parts of you that didn't fit the persona, all the impulses and qualities you learned were unacceptable. And here's Jung's radical insight. The shadow isn't evil. It's not some demonic force trying to destroy you. It's you. It's the parts of you that got exiled, and they're trying to come home. You don't have a shadow problem. You have an integration problem. The shadow isn't the darkness itself. It's the refusal to acknowledge the darkness. It's the split between what you claim to be and what you actually are. And that split, that fragmentation, is the source of immense suffering. The shadow operates in very specific, predictable ways once you know what to look for. First, through projection. You see in others what you won't acknowledge in yourself. The person who disgusts you, who triggers intense, irrational hatred, they're displaying your disowned qualities. The person you idealize, who you think is perfect and amazing, they're carrying your unlived potential, the qualities you have but won't claim. Jung said, if you're bothered by someone's arrogance, look at your own hidden superiority. If you're disgusted by someone's neediness, look at your own unacknowledged dependency. If you despise someone's laziness, look at where you're driven by compulsion rather than genuine desire. The intensity of your reaction is always proportional to how much of your own shadow is activated. Mild annoyance, small shadow projection, visceral hatred, major shadow activation. Second, the shadow operates through slips and symptoms. Freudian slips where you say what you actually mean instead of what you intended. Irrational anger that seems disproportionate to the situation. Self-sabotage, repeatedly doing the thing that undermines what you say you want. These aren't random. They're the shadow acting out because you won't give it conscious attention. Third, through attraction and repulsion. You're magnetically drawn to people who embody your shadow qualities. The person who terrifies you might be showing you your own power. The person who fascinates you might be living the freedom you've denied yourself. Jung said the people in your life are mirrors. They're showing you your own psyche. The external world is always reflecting your internal state. And here's the paradox that changes everything. The very thing you most fear about yourself, the quality you're most ashamed of, the part you've worked hardest to eliminate, that's where your power is. The depressed person who thinks they're weak is often sitting on volcanic rage that, if expressed appropriately, would change their life. The people pleaser who thinks they're kind is often denying healthy aggression, the ability to say no, to have boundaries, to prioritize themselves. The person terrified of being selfish is usually starving their own soul, giving from emptiness, resentful and exhausted. Jung saw this over and over. The very quality you're repressing contains your vitality, your creativity, your life force. The shadow isn't just darkness, it's unlived life. It's the potential you've rejected, the energy you've suppressed, the authentic self you've hidden away. And until you integrate it, until you bring it into consciousness, you'll keep projecting it onto others. Keep acting it out unconsciously. keep feeling fragmented and half alive. The practice Jung developed for shadow work is called active imagination. It's a way of dialoguing directly with the unconscious, with the rejected parts of yourself. Here's how it works. When you feel triggered, when someone activates intense emotion in you, pause, don't react. Instead, ask yourself, what part of me is this person mirroring? How am I doing this same thing in a different form? Let's say someone criticizes you for being controlling and you're furious because you don't see yourself that way at all. That's a clue. The fury is defensive because there's something true underneath that you don't want to see. So instead of defending, you sit with it. You close your eyes and visualize your own controlling tendency as a figure. Maybe it appears as a stern parent or a rigid taskmaster or a frightened child gripping tightly. And you ask it questions. Why are you here? What are you protecting? What are you afraid will happen if you let go? And here's the crucial part. You let it answer. You don't control the response. You let it surprise you. Often the shadow speaks with shocking honesty. I control because no one else will keep things safe. I control because I was abandoned and I can't risk that again. I control because underneath I feel completely powerless. And suddenly you're not dealing with a flaw to be fixed. You're dealing with a wounded part of yourself that's been trying to protect you, that needs compassion and integration, not elimination. Shadow integration isn't about acting out every dark impulse. It's not about becoming your worst self. It's about making the unconscious conscious, about acknowledging what's actually true, about befriending the rejected parts so they stop running your life from the basement. When you integrate the shadow, the projection stops. You stop seeing enemies everywhere. You stop giving your power away to people who seem to have what you lack. You become whole, which means you become paradoxical, light and dark, strong and vulnerable, selfish and generous, rational and wild. Now here's where it gets really strange. Because the shadow is personal, it's your rejected stuff, your individual repressions, your specific history. But Jung discovered something beneath the personal shadow that's universal, that's shared by all humans across all time. He called it the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious is not something you learn. It's inherited. It's built into the structure of the human psyche itself, the same way your body has a heart and lungs. Every human, regardless of culture, language, or era, shares the same fundamental patterns of psychological experience. And these patterns, these universal images and themes, Jung called archetypes. Think about it. Why do cultures across the world with no contact with each other create the same stories? The hero who goes on a journey, faces trials, dies and is reborn, returns transformed. The great mother who nurtures and devours. The wise old man who offers guidance, the trickster who disrupts order, the innocent child, the warrior, the lover. These aren't learned. They emerge spontaneously from the psyche because they're archetypal. They're the deep structure of human experience. Jung studied mythology, religion, fairy tales, alchemy, dreams, and he kept finding the same symbols appearing everywhere. Water representing the unconscious, the sun representing consciousness, the serpent representing transformation and healing, the mandala representing wholeness. These symbols appear in ancient Egypt, medieval Europe, indigenous tribes in the Amazon, modern dreams of city dwellers who've never studied mythology. They're universal because they're built into the psyche. Why does this matter? because you're not just living your individual life. You're living out archetypal patterns. When you fall in love, you're not just meeting a person, you're encountering the anima or animus, the soul image of the opposite sex that lives in your unconscious. That's why falling in love feels mythic, larger than life, like you've known this person forever. You're not responding to the actual person. You're projecting the archetype onto them. When you face a crisis, you're in the archetype of the hero's journey. You're being called to leave the familiar, face the unknown, die to your old self, and be reborn. When you meet someone who seems all wise, who you think has all the answers, you're projecting the wise old man archetype. When you meet someone who triggers your nurturing instincts or your fear of being consumed, you're encountering the mother archetype. The danger is possession. When an archetype takes over, when you identify with it completely, you stop being yourself and you become a character in a myth. You become the archetype, the man who thinks he's a savior, sacrificing himself compulsively, unable to receive, always rescuing. The woman who becomes the eternal mother, losing her individual identity, existing only to nurture others, neglecting herself entirely. The person trapped in the victim role, convinced the world is against them, unable to see their own agency. The person possessed by the hero, always seeking the next quest, unable to rest, defining themselves by achievement and conquest. When you're possessed by an archetype, your life becomes rigid, one-dimensional. You lose flexibility, nuance, the ability to be different things in different contexts, and you suffer because no single archetype is big enough to contain the fullness of who you are. You're meant to move through different archetypal energies depending on what life requires. Sometimes the mother, sometimes the warrior, sometimes the lover, sometimes the sage. Wholeness requires fluidity, but here's the gift. When you work with archetypes consciously, when you recognize the pattern you're in without identifying with it completely, they become sources of tremendous power, creativity, and meaning. You can invoke the warrior when you need courage. You can call on the mother when you need to nurture. You can access the lover when you need to open your heart. You can embody the sage when you need wisdom. The archetypes become tools, resources, energies you can work with rather than forces that possess you. Jung said individuation involves recognizing these patterns, operating in your life, and relating to them consciously. You see that you're in a hero's journey, and you can choose how to respond. You notice you're projecting the anima onto a woman, and you can take the projection back, see the actual person, while still honoring the inner image that's trying to emerge. You recognize when you're being pulled into the mother role, and you can set boundaries, maintain your individual identity while still offering care. And of all the archetypes, there's one Jung considered supreme, the organizing center of the entire psyche. He called it the self, capital S. And this is where psychology starts sounding like mysticism, because Jung's self isn't the ego. It's not the small self, the I. The self is the totality of the psyche, conscious and unconscious, personal and collective, light and shadow. All the archetypes, everything. It's the God image within, the divine spark, the Atman, the Buddha nature. Jung used psychological language, but he was pointing to the same reality mystics have described for millennia. The ego is a small outpost of consciousness in the vast sea of the unconscious. It's necessary. You need an ego to function in the world, to have boundaries, to make decisions. But the ego is not in charge. It's a servant of the self, though it rarely knows it. The self is the true sovereign, the organizing intelligence that's been guiding your life from the beginning. It's what pumps your heart without your conscious effort, what heals your wounds, what dreams your dreams, what sends symptoms when you're off path, what orchestrates synchronicities. The self guides through symbols, through the language of myth and dream. It speaks through intuition, through the body, through symptoms and slips, through attraction and repulsion, through the people you meet and the events that unfold. It's trying to lead you toward wholeness, toward the fulfillment of your unique potential, toward what Jung called your destiny. Not destiny in the sense of a predetermined fate, but destiny in the sense of the fullest expression of who you are. The experience of the self is unmistakable. Those moments when you feel connected to something larger than yourself. Peak experiences, profound dreams that leave you changed. Encounters with beauty or nature that shatter your ordinary awareness. Moments of deep knowing where you just understand something without knowing how you know. Falling in love not with a person, but with life itself. Moments of absolute presence where time disappears. These are encounters with the self. But here's the danger: ego inflation. When the ego identifies as the self, when it thinks it is the divine intelligence, you get grandiosity. You become convinced you're enlightened, special, beyond human limitation. You lose humility. You stop listening. You think you have all the answers. This is how cults form. A charismatic leader becomes possessed by the self-archetype and identifies with it completely, believing they are God, demanding worship. This is how narcissism operates. Ego, self-confusion where the small self-inflates to cosmic proportions. The goal of individuation isn't to become the self. You already are the self. You've always been the self. The goal is for the ego to recognize it's part of something larger, to serve it, to align with it, to become its conscious instrument in the world. The ego learns to say, I don't know. I need guidance. I'm listening. The ego becomes humble, transparent, a servant of the deeper wisdom. And how does the self communicate? How do you hear its guidance when it doesn't speak in words, when it doesn't follow logic, when it operates through symbol and paradox? This is where dreams become absolutely central to Jung's psychology. Jung said, the dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul. Dreams are the most direct communication from the unconscious. Every night while your ego sleeps, while your conscious control relaxes, the unconscious speaks. It shows you what you're ignoring, what you're repressing, what's trying to emerge. It compensates for your one-sided conscious attitude. It prepares you for what's coming. It warns you of dangers. It reveals solutions to problems your conscious mind can't solve. The materialist error is dismissing dreams as noise, as random neurons firing during sleep, as meaningless mental garbage. This is catastrophically wrong. Dreams are meaning. They're the psyche's way of maintaining balance, of guiding you, of revealing what consciousness can't see. And if you ignore them, if you dismiss them as nonsense, you're cutting yourself off from your own inner guidance system. You're like someone who has a wise teacher offering advice every single night, and you keep saying, no thanks, that's just random noise. Dreams work through compensation. If you're too identified with being good, your dreams will be violent or sexual. balancing the psyche by expressing the shadow. If you're too rational, your dreams will be wild, emotional, chaotic. If you're too passive, your dreams will be aggressive. The unconscious is always trying to restore balance, to show you what you're missing, to integrate what you've split off. Dreams also have a perspective function. They show possible futures. They prepare you for situations before they happen. They warn you about people, about decisions, about paths you're considering. Jung had countless examples of dreams that predicted events that showed outcomes before they occurred. Not because the unconscious is psychic in some paranormal sense, but because it has access to information your conscious mind doesn't. Subtle cues, patterns, intuitions that you're not consciously aware of. Dreams speak in symbols, not literalism. This is where most people get confused. If you dream about your mother dying, it doesn't mean your mother will die. It means the mother archetype, the inner mother, some part of your psyche related to nurturing or dependency is transforming. If you dream about a house, it's not a literal house, it's the psyche itself. The rooms are different aspects of your inner life. The basement is the unconscious. The attic is transcendent potential. Who lives in the house? What condition is it in? What's happening there? Every figure in a dream is a part of you. Every character represents an aspect of your psyche. The threatening man might be your disowned aggression. The wise woman might be your intuition trying to speak. The child might be your innocent, playful self that needs attention. Jung's method is to ask of every dream figure, if this were a part of me, what would it represent? What is it trying to tell me? The practice of working with dreams is simple, but requires consistency. Keep a journal by your bed. Write down your dreams immediately upon waking. They fade fast, usually within minutes. Don't judge them. Don't dismiss them. Just record them. Then sit with them. Don't rush to interpret. Let the images speak. Ask, what feeling did this dream leave me with? What in my waking life mirrors this situation or symbol? If every figure is a part of me, what do they represent? Then comes amplification, Jung's technique of expanding the symbol. Take a key image from the dream. Let's say you dream of a snake. First, your personal association. What's your relationship to snakes? Fear, fascination. Then cultural and mythological. What do snakes symbolize across traditions? Transformation, because they shed their skin. Healing, like the caduceus. Danger, temptation, like the serpent in Eden. Kundalini, spiritual energy rising. Then ask, what's transforming in my life right now? What's healing or threatening? What energy is rising that I am afraid of? You're not looking for one definitive interpretation. You're opening a dialogue with the unconscious. You're saying, I'm listening. I want to understand. Show me more. And over time, you start to recognize your personal symbol system. You learn how your unconscious speaks. You develop a relationship with it. And this changes everything because suddenly you're not alone. You have an inner guide, a source of wisdom deeper than your conscious understanding. Now here's where reality starts bending again, because dreams aren't the only way the unconscious communicates. Sometimes the message comes through the external world in ways that defy explanation. Sometimes your inner state and outer events synchronize in meaningful ways. This brings us back to synchronicity, but we need to go deeper into what this actually means and how to recognize it. Synchronicity is the causal connecting principle. Jung's term for meaningful coincidences that can't be explained by cause and effect. It's when an inner psychological state produces a corresponding outer event simultaneously, and the connection between them is meaning, not causation. The scarab appearing when the woman dreamed of a scarab. You think of someone intensely, and they call within the hour. You're contemplating a decision, and you overhear a stranger's conversation that answers your question perfectly. The book that falls off the shelf and opens to the exact page you need. Jung insisted this wasn't magical thinking or confirmation bias. He documented it methodically, studied it scientifically, tried to understand the mechanism, and his conclusion was radical. Mind and matter aren't separate. They're two aspects of one underlying reality. The unconscious doesn't just exist in your head, it's woven into the fabric of the world. When you're aligned with the self, when transformation is active, when your ego is less defended, the boundary between inner and outer becomes permeable. The psyche reaches out through dreams, and it reaches out through events. Synchronicity happens most often during major life transitions, when you're falling in love, when someone dies, when you're on the verge of a breakthrough or a breakdown, when you're individuating, becoming more yourself. It's as if the universe conspires to support transformation, providing signs, confirmations, guidance through arranged encounters and meaningful coincidences. But here's the critical distinction. You can't force synchronicity. You can't chase it. You can't try to make every coincidence meaningful. That's superstition. That's seeing patterns that aren't there. Synchronicity is grace. It happens when it happens. Your job isn't to create it, but to recognize it when it occurs, to honor it, to let it guide you. The practice is twofold. First, stay open. Don't dismiss meaningful coincidences out of a need to seem rational. Don't collapse everything into materialism. Stay curious, stay humble, stay aware that the world might be stranger and more alive than you were taught. Second, don't become superstitious. Don't attribute meaning to every random event. Discernment is crucial. Real synchronicity carries undeniable psychological significance. It moves you. It shifts something. It feels numinous, charged with meaning. Random coincidences are just noise. Jung saw synchronicity as evidence of the unity of existence, the non-separation of psyche and cosmos. It's what mystics have always known, that consciousness isn't confined to your skull, that you're not separate from the world, that mind and matter are continuous. And this understanding changes how you live. You start paying attention differently. You notice the world speaking. You see symbols everywhere, not imposed by you, but emerging naturally. You feel accompanied, guided, part of something larger. So let's bring this together. We've talked about the persona, the mask you wear. We've talked about the shadow, the rejected parts waiting to be integrated. We've talked about archetypes, the universal patterns structuring your experience. We've talked about the self, the divine center, organizing your life. We've talked about dreams, the nightly messages from the unconscious. We've talked about synchronicity, the mysterious connection of inner and outer. But what's the point of all this? What's it all leading toward? Jung had one word for the destination: individuation. And individuation is the most important concept in his entire psychology, the unifying purpose behind everything else. Individuation is the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, integrating all parts of the psyche into conscious awareness, differentiating from collective values and expectations, establishing a conscious relationship with the self. It's not self-improvement. It's not becoming better according to external standards. It's not achieving some ideal state. It's becoming whole. And wholeness is radically different from perfection. Perfection is about eliminating what you don't like, becoming one-sided, fitting an ideal. Wholeness is about integrating everything, becoming paradoxical, embodying contradictions. The individuated person isn't perfectly good. They're human, flawed, real, but they're not split. They're not hiding half of themselves. They're not performing. They're authentic, which means they contain light and dark, strength and vulnerability, certainty and doubt. Individuation has stages, though they're not strictly linear. First half of life is about building an ego, establishing a persona, achieving in the outer world. Oh, you need this. You need to develop competence to form an identity, to establish yourself socially and professionally. This isn't wrong. It's necessary. But it's only the first half. Then often around midlife, something shifts. The things that motivated you stop working. Success feels empty. Relationships that seem fine reveal themselves as superficial. You start asking questions you didn't ask before. Who am I really? What's the point? Is this all there is? Jung called this the midlife crisis, but it's not a crisis. It's an invitation. The self is demanding attention, saying the first half is over, it's time to turn inward. This is terrifying because everything you built your life on starts to feel unstable. Your career might feel meaningless. Your marriage might feel like a comfortable prison. Your identity might feel like a costume. And you have a choice. You can numb out, cling to the old structures, refuse the call to transformation, or you can say yes to the descent, to the inner work, to the process of becoming real. The second half of life, if you answer the call, is about turning inward, withdrawing projections, taking back the qualities you've placed on others and owning them in yourself, integrating the shadow, befriending the darkness, reclaiming your power, differentiating from collective values, living your truth instead of society's script, and establishing a relationship with the self, learning to listen, to serve the deeper intelligence, to trust your inner guidance. This process makes you paradoxically more yourself and less separate. You become unique, irreducibly individual, no longer trying to fit the mold, but simultaneously you become more connected to the universal, more aware of your participation in the collective unconscious, more compassionate because you recognize your own shadow in everyone. The cost of individuation is loneliness because you're differentiating from the collective, which means you're stepping out of groupthink, out of conformity, out of collective values. You might lose friends who need you to stay who you were. You might disappoint family who wanted you to fulfill their expectations. You might end relationships that can't hold your authenticity. Jung said the most terrifying thing is to accept yourself completely, because self-acceptance means you stop abandoning yourself for approval, and that costs you approval. But the reward is immense. You get your life back. You stop living for others and start living for the self. You stop performing and start being. Your relationships become real because people are meeting you, not your mask. Your work becomes meaningful because it aligns with your true nature. You feel integrated, no longer split between who you are privately and who you are publicly. You have energy because you're not exhausting yourself maintaining a false image. Individuation doesn't make you perfect or happy in some superficial sense. You'll still suffer. You'll still face difficulties. You'll still have problems, but the problems become meaningful. You're not suffering from being split, from abandoning yourself, from living falsely. You're suffering from the unavoidable challenges of being human. Loss, uncertainty, mortality. And that kind of suffering doesn't fragment you. It deepens you. Jung saw individuation as a sacred process, a religious calling, even if you're not religious. It's the soul's journey toward its own fulfillment. And while the journey is individual, the patterns are universal. You're walking a path countless others have walked. The hero's journey is individuation. The mystical path is individuation. The alchemical transformation is individuation. Different languages, same process. The ego dying to serve the self. The false self dissolving to reveal the true self. Now let's talk about how you actually do this, because concepts are beautiful, but you need practice. You need methods. You need ways to engage with your unconscious and begin the work of integration. Let me give you practical tools you can start using immediately. First, shadow work. This is ongoing, lifelong, never fully complete, but you start with your projections. Make a list of 3 people who irritate you intensely. Write down exactly what quality they embody that you can't stand. Maybe it's arrogance, or neediness, or laziness, or phoniness. Whatever it is, write it down. Now comes the hard part. Find where you express that same quality in disguised form. This requires brutal honesty. If you're irritated by someone's arrogance, look at where you feel secretly superior, where you judge others, where you think you're better but hide it. If you're disgusted by neediness, look at where you're dependent but won't admit it, where you want others to take care of you but pretend you're self-sufficient. If you judge someone as lazy, look at where you're driven by compulsion rather than genuine desire, where you can't rest, where you define your worth by productivity. The pattern is always the same. What you can't stand in others is what you won't acknowledge in yourself. And once you see it, once you own it, the projection dissolves. The person might still have that quality, but it stops bothering you intensely because it's no longer activating your disowned shadow. Next level of shadow work is active imagination with the rejected part. Sit quietly. Close your eyes. Visualize the quality you've been rejecting as a figure, a person, an animal, a symbol, whatever emerges. Then speak to it. Ask it questions. Who are you? Why are you here? What do you need from me? What happens if I keep rejecting you? And this is crucial. Let it answer. Don't control the response. Don't make it say what you want to hear. Let it surprise you. The shadow often speaks with shocking honesty. I'm your anger. I'm here because you were never allowed to say no. I need you to stop being nice all the time. If you keep rejecting me, I'll come out sideways as depression and resentment. And suddenly you're not fighting an enemy. You're meeting a wounded part of yourself that needs integration. Write the dialogue. Date it. Do it regularly. Over time, your relationship with the shadow shifts. It stops being a threat and becomes an ally. The energy trapped in repression becomes available. Your vitality increases. You become more whole. Second practice, working with dreams. This requires commitment, but it's the most direct way to communicate with the unconscious. Keep a journal by your bed. The moment you wake up, before you move, before you check your phone, Write down whatever you remember, even fragments, even just a feeling or an image. Don't judge it, just record it. Then later, when you have time, sit with the dream. Read it slowly. Notice what feeling it leaves you with. That feeling is often more important than the content. A scary dream might leave you feeling energized. A pleasant dream might leave you feeling uneasy. Trust the feeling. Ask yourself, what in my waking life mirrors this situation? Where am I feeling trapped, like in the dream where I couldn't escape? Where am I being chased by something I won't face? Where am I in the house with unknown rooms I'm afraid to enter? The dream is always commenting on your current psychological state, showing you what you're not seeing consciously. Then take the main symbols and amplify them. Dream of water? What does water mean to you personally? What does it symbolize culturally? The unconscious emotions, the unknown depths. Is the water clear or murky, calm or turbulent? Are you in it or observing it? Each detail reveals something about your relationship to your unconscious. Don't expect immediate clarity. Sit with the dream for days. Let it work on you. Often the meaning emerges gradually, or another dream comes that clarifies the first. You're developing a relationship with the unconscious, learning its language, showing it you're listening. Third practice, examining the persona. This is uncomfortable but necessary. Write down the different roles you play: professional you, family you, friend you, social media you. Describe each one. How do they differ? What does each one emphasize or hide? Then ask, where do I feel fake, or where am I performing? What do I pretend to feel that I don't actually feel? Where does maintaining the mask cost me energy? Be specific. Maybe at work you pretend to care about projects that bore you. Maybe with family you perform happiness when you're miserable. Maybe with friends you agree to plans you don't want because you can't say no. Now experiment. Choose one low-stakes situation and drop the persona slightly. Say what you actually think instead of what you think you should say. Express a real preference instead of deferring. Let one person see you slightly more as you actually are. Notice what happens. Most of the time, the feared rejection doesn't come. People are often relieved when you're real because it gives them permission to be real too. And when rejection does come, when someone can't handle authenticity, you've learned something crucial. That person needed you to perform, needed you to be false, and that's not a relationship worth maintaining. Fourth practice, active imagination beyond the shadow. This is Jung's core method for dialoguing with any aspect of the unconscious. You can do this with emotions, with symptoms, with creative blocks, with relationship patterns, with anything that feels stuck or repetitive. Let's say you struggle with chronic anxiety. Instead of fighting it, trying to make it go away, trying to medicate it away, you turn toward it. You sit quietly and say, I want to meet the anxiety. I want to understand it. And you visualize it taking form. Maybe it's a trembling child. Maybe it's a vigilant guardian. Maybe it's a storm. Whatever image emerges, you work with it. You ask it questions. Who are you? Why are you here? What are you protecting me from? What do you need from me? And you listen. You let it respond uncensored. Often the anxiety will say something like, I'm the part of you that was never allowed to rest. I keep you vigilant because if you relax, something terrible will happen. I need you to finally feel safe, but I don't know how. And now you're not fighting a symptom. You're dialoguing with a part of yourself that's been trying to protect you, that has a history, a reason for existing. You can ask, what would you need to feel safe? What would allow you to relax? And it might say, I need you to set boundaries. I need you to leave the job that's destroying you. I need you to stop surrounding yourself with people who don't care about you. The symptom becomes a guide. The anxiety isn't random. It's pointing to something in your life that needs to change. When you address the underlying issue, when you honor what the symptom is saying, it often dissolves on its own. Not through fighting it, but through understanding and integration. All of these practices have the same goal, making the unconscious conscious, bringing what's hidden into awareness, integrating what's been split off, becoming whole. And this isn't a weekend workshop. It's not a quick fix. It's lifelong work. But it's the most important work you can do because it's the work of becoming yourself. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And in a world that's constantly telling you who you should be, what you should want, how you should live, becoming yourself is an act of rebellion. It's a refusal to abandon yourself for approval. It's a commitment to the self over the collective. It's a journey into the unknown depths of your own psyche, a willingness to meet the shadow, to remove the persona, to follow the dreams, to trust the synchronicities, to serve the deeper intelligence trying to live through you. The world needs individuated people desperately, because unconscious people, people identified with the persona, people possessed by shadow, people living out collective values without question, they create the horrors of history. They follow demagogues. They scapegoat others. They project their shadow onto enemies. They repeat patterns of violence and oppression because they've never looked inside, never done the work of integration. Individuated people break the cycle. They withdraw their projections. They own their shadow. They think for themselves. They live from authenticity. They don't need enemies because they've met the enemy within and made peace with it. They don't need certainty because they've learned to live with paradox. They don't need to control others because they've surrendered the ego's demand for total control. And here's what Jung saw that gives me hope. Individuation is contagious. When you become real, you give others permission to be real. When you integrate your shadow, you stop activating others' shadows. When you live authentically, you show others it's possible. You become what Jung called a carrier of the self, someone who embodies wholeness, who radiates integration, who helps others on their own journey simply by being who you are. So let me bring this to a close by returning to where we started. You are not who you think you are. The voice in your head, the personality you've built, the story you tell about yourself. It's mostly costume, mostly performance, mostly defense. Underneath, there's the self, the vast intelligence that's been guiding you your entire life, trying to lead you toward wholeness. You've been receiving messages from this deeper self constantly, through dreams that felt significant but you dismissed, through symptoms that felt burdensome but were actually invitations, through people who triggered you intensely and were showing you your own reflection, through synchronicities that seemed magical but you rationalized away, through the voice of intuition you ignored because it didn't make logical sense. The self has been patient, endlessly patient, orchestrating your life, arranging encounters, sending signals, waiting for you to wake up and start listening. The suffering you've experienced, the depression, the anxiety, the loneliness, the feeling of being split, It's not random. It's not a malfunction. It's the psyche refusing to participate in a false life. It's the self demanding that you stop abandoning yourself, that you remove the mask, that you face the shadow, that you become real. Every symptom is a teacher. Every difficulty is an invitation to go deeper. Every crisis is a call to transformation. And here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. You don't have to figure this out alone. You don't have to consciously orchestrate your own healing. The self knows the way. The unconscious is already moving you toward wholeness. Your job isn't to be in control, it's to listen, to cooperate, to say yes to the process, to trust the intelligence that's already at work. When you start working with your psyche instead of against it, when you learn its language, when you honor its symbols and messages, when you integrate what's been split off, something miraculous happens. Your life becomes coherent. The chaos starts making sense. The patterns reveal their meaning. The people in your life stop being random and start being mirrors and teachers. The events that seemed like bad luck reveal themselves as necessary steps in your becoming. You realize you've been guided all along, even when you didn't know it, especially when you didn't know it. The psyche wants wholeness, not happiness. Wholeness includes everything you've been running from. Your darkness, your weakness, your shame, your rage, your grief, your desires, your failures, all of it. And the paradox is that when you stop trying to be good and start trying to be whole, you become more genuinely good than you ever were through effort, because you're no longer performing morality, you're living from integration. Here's the mantra Jung offers you, the truth he spent his life discovering and teaching. I want you to hear this clearly. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. The psyche wants wholeness, not happiness. And wholeness includes everything I've been running from. My task is not to be good, it's to be real. And the more real I become, the more the chaos begins to make sense. The symptoms were never the problem. The refusal to listen was. You're not broken. You have never been broken. You've been living split, performing a persona, exiling your shadow, ignoring your dreams, dismissing the synchronicities as coincidence, mistaking the ego's chatter for the self's guidance. But none of that means you're damaged beyond repair. It means you're human. It means you're at the beginning of the journey, not the end. Individuation doesn't require you to be perfect. It requires you to be honest. It requires the courage to descend into the parts of yourself you've been taught to fear. It requires you to stop abandoning yourself for approval. And it requires patience, because this work takes time. You have a lifetime because you might need a lifetime. The psyche doesn't rush. It moves and spirals, returning to the same themes at deeper levels, revealing layers gradually. So go gently with yourself. You don't have to do everything at once. Start small. Write down one dream. Ask about one projection. Who bothers me and why? Drop the persona for 5 minutes with one safe person. Let one rejected part of yourself speak. The self will meet you where you are. It's been waiting your whole life. Every moment you turn inward, every moment you choose truth over performance, every moment you honor your own experience, the self recognizes this and responds. The whole journey is already happening, whether you're conscious of it or not. Your dreams are speaking every night. Your symptoms are guiding you. The people you meet are mirrors. The events unfolding are synchronized with your inner process. The only question is whether you'll participate consciously or continue sleepwalking through it. And I'm here to tell you that waking up, while difficult, while frightening, while lonely at times, is also the most profound relief you'll ever experience. Because you finally stop pretending. You finally stop splitting yourself. You finally come home to yourself. And that homecoming, that integration, that wholeness, it's what your soul has been longing for all along. If this resonated with you, if you feel something shifting inside as you hear these words, I want you to do something. Not for me, but for yourself. Take a moment and like this video. Let that be a gesture to yourself that you're committing to this work, that you're saying yes to the journey, that you're willing to meet yourself honestly, and leave a comment. Share one insight that emerged for you, one question that's alive for you now, one thing you're going to try. Because when you articulate something, when you make it public, even in a small way, you're making it real. You're telling the unconscious that you're listening, that you're serious about this. And if you want more of these explorations, if you want to go deeper into Jung and the psychology of wholeness, into dreams and symbols, and the inner life, subscribe to this channel. Because what we've covered today is vast, but it's only the beginning. The psyche is endlessly rich, endlessly deep. We've only scratched the surface of Jung's discoveries, and there's so much more to explore together. You're not going crazy. You're waking up. And the awakening, the individuation, the becoming. This is what Jung dedicated his life to understanding and facilitating. His entire body of work is a map for exactly this journey you're on. You're not alone in this. You're part of something ancient and universal, walking a path that heroes and mystics and seekers have walked for thousands of years. The self has been waiting for you your whole life, orchestrating everything, trying to guide you home. And now you're starting to hear its voice. Now you're beginning to understand its language. Now the journey becomes conscious. And everything, absolutely everything, changes from here. Thank you for walking this path with me today. Thank you for your courage to look inward, to question, to grow. This is the most important work any of us can do. And I honor you for showing up for it. Go well, and remember, you're not broken, you're becoming.